Bans are upon us, and in 1 week we will hope to get sweeping changes in all constructed formats. The commander bans are down the line in April, and to be fair, those aren't even bans. They specifically said they will be looking to unban cards and then solidify the game changer list and all that stuff. But for constructed, on March 31st, we are hoping to get changes to not only standard and pioneer formats that I don't touch, but I know people are talking about changes that are required. But in modern specifically, we see, the light at the end of the tunnel for a certain few cards. And also when it comes to the legacy format, a lot of broken things happening over there. And then for Pauper, the aggressive metagame, the burn, aggro, need to play weather the storm or you lose to burn type of metagame also requires a bit of a change. We expect changes for all of this. Specifically in today's video, I wanted to talk about cards that I don't think are gonna get unbanned when it comes to the modern format. There's a lot of nuanced discussion when it comes to the Pauper format and legacy format. The legacy format just encompasses so many cards, it's hard to unban things. It's a lot more of a rare thing, although a lot of players have talked about making unbans to try and make it so the modern Horizons world that we're in is a lot more affected than what's going on, because it just feels like a lot of cards are power crept out of the format. I think in many ways we also see the writing on the wall for certain cards to be unbanned, cards that were specifically named like Glimpse of Nature or Birthing Pod. So a lot of people are expecting some of these cards to be unbanned. But again, today we are talking about cards that I don't think should be unbanned, that are probably borderline for a lot of people, or at least a significant amount of the Magic population, in the sense of maybe it being 30 or 40% of people, but the majority of people still believe that it should stay banned. Now, when it comes to the banned and restricted list, again, a lot of nuanced decisions in terms of what needs to be banned and what stays banned here. I, for one, am on the side of unbanning more cards. I don't like really all-encompassing ban lists when it comes to formats like this, and I really like it when we are able to access and play with more cards in general. As we can see, like, we got ban formats for everything here. And when it comes to formats like this, I think Modern Horizons has shifted the power level of the modern format so much that really only unbanning powerful cards are going to be the way forward. Now, does this mean I want, Golgari Grave Troll unbanned for like the third time? Do I want Arkham's Astrolabe unbanned as well? No, but there are certain cards that I think can see the light, that don't need to see the light of day, like Ponder. And specifically, I wanted to bring this up because Ponder and Preordain were seen as cards that were almost one and the same, in the sense of there were 1-mana blue cantrips that are quote-unquote legal in modern but were banned due to various reasons. Now, these have been banned for a while, since the beginning of the format, but technically due to their printing, they have been legal if we kind of followed the list there of playability. But when it comes to Preordain, we had that recent unban, and largely speaking, Preordain has almost done nothing to the format. I think in a lot of ways people like it as an option. They tried it a lot, and it does see play every so often, especially as a modern mill player myself. There are some lists that do like to opt for Preordain. In metagames where graveyard hate is at an all-time high, you don't really want to be using a card like Visions of Beyond, and the selection that you get off of Preordain is actually more valuable outside of maybe enabling a raw 3 cards drawn. And also it lets you keep greedier hands too, let's be honest. I love me a good 1-land keep that just wins the game off a second land, right? Never didn't have it. But with a card like Ponder, you have to compare this to Preordain and understand why this is miles better. For many of you, you haven't played Legacy or understood this in a constructed context. You might have played this in Commander. But Ponder's 1-mana blue. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. So technically 1 more than Preordain. Although with Preordain, you can scribe both cards that you look at to the bottom and then draw cards. So that's 3. But you just look at the top 3 cards, you put them back in any order, and then you may shuffle. So the key is you almost get to look at a mystery 4th card in some ways, and then you draw a card. So again, with Preordain, sorcery speed 1 mana, you scry 2, then draw 3. Technically, you can look at 3 cards. If you don't like those 2 cards, you get to bottom them and just draw the 3rd. But a lot of times what you get with Ponder is the fact that you get the context. Information is key here. And what you then realize is that the first 2 cards that you look at in a lot of scenarios actually are really valuable in context with the third. Being able to look at that third card is really powerful. Heck, even the first card that you don't actually really like are really good in tandem with the second and third card. So you may want to rearrange the order, draw the second card, then the third card, then you kind of land out with the first card. Whereas if you preordain this, you might actually just bottom both cards. Then you find the third card and you're like, the first two cards would have been really good. Now, I'm not saying this is the most common scenario, but it is valuable to note because, again, cards are really important in their context, especially in a format like Modern where quality is king, and a lot of decks do play the quantity route where they play a critical mass of a certain type of effect. Think of, in a very simple example, something like Burn, where you're playing a lot of 1 mana, deal 3 damage type of spells. Something that is quantity based, but in a quality based format where you're looking for specific cards in specific matchups, something like Ponder is really valuable. Now, a lot of people quote this card as probably being included in combo based strategies. And of course, it's very different when you bring it in context with Legacy, where Legacy operates on the level of requiring free spells. A lot of times I make Legacy content and people are like, oh, why don't we just ban Forceful? I think these people are just very uninformed and don't know what the hell they're talking about. And whatever, they want Legacy to be something completely that it's not, right? Modern is its own identity, and past that, Legacy takes that jump in operating off the axis of free spells, and it requires Force of Will, Force Negation, Daze. And so Ponder is very different. It's not a combo enabler per se. It is an enabler of your quantity decks. It is an enabler of finding the answers you need, or like having to look at the top 3 is really important because the broken decks are doing very broken things. Whereas the Modern format almost will never be balanced probably at this point, but does require a level of searching, but not one that enables combos fully. So I don't believe Ponder will just go into Ruby Storm and bring back Is It Storm or something like that. I think it will go into the control decks and allow them to find answers better, which might honestly just be a net positive thing, but it might also just go into the Dimir control decks and allow them to find Frog and Orcish Bowmasters faster, which might lead to more problematic things in general. Being able to look at the top 3 cards and then shuffle if you don't like that, allowing you to find that mystery potential 4th card is just fantastic. It just allows you to do a lot. Again, just having more information is key. More optionality is key. And I think a card like this probably shouldn't be unbanned. Although it's close, I can see the argument for it. I ultimately land on the side of not, but let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I think the quality that the control decks and the blue decks get access to might be a little too far over the top when it comes to this. Also, is there a combo deck that would really want to use this? I don't think there is one in Modern. Maybe again, just having that quality looking at, I don't know. I don't think there's a combo deck that wants to use this. I think this only serves to like help the mid-range and control based blue decks and help slow down the format, which could be a net positive thing. But regardless, the next card I want to talk about is Punishing Fire. And Punishing Fire, the big reason for this card's ban is its combination with another land. So let's read Punishing Fire first. Red and 1 for an instant. Punishing Fire deals 2 damage to any target. Notably, this card was made before Planeswalkers, so that's why you see the errata. On the card, it's going to say creature or player, but the errata is now that it says any target, so you are allowed to target Planeswalkers. Whenever an opponent gains life, you may play 1 red. If you do, return Punishing Fire from the graveyard to your hand. So it is a recurable source of like a 2-mana shock. And the reason this is powerful is because it is used in tandem with something like Grove of the Burn Willows. Now, Grove of the Burn Willows allows you to, on its second mode, add a green or a red mana to your mana pool, and then each opponent gains 1 life. So you can imagine how in combination with something like Punishing Fire, you gain that 1 life, you then add red to your mana pool, so then you just need to add 1 more to return the Punishing Fire back to your hand, and then continue to use this engine over time. And this is obviously a very slow engine, and the reason this card is banned is largely because it's going to hold back the creature decks. Because when you kind of bring it in tandem with something like Wrenn and 6, we start to see where the colors start to mix together, and something like Wrenn and 6 and a slower Modern format can really be problematic when it's held by backed by cards like this. Now, really, in the Modern format right now, the big creature deck that you can think of, or the 2 I should say, are Energy, which will probably get banned. So I'm thinking of a world where, Punishing Fire gets unbanned. What's left afterwards? We have the Orzhov mid-range list that is kind of the next evolution of Taxes for a lot of people. And that deck actually has a fair amount of X2s and X1s. And so Punishing Fire in the long game would only serve to hold that deck back, because creature decks will just get grinded out by something like this. You play some board wipes, you play some single target removal, you use Renin 6 and or something else as your long game win condition, and then you just use Punishing Fire to control the board. Now, a lot of people might actually like that type of gameplay. A lot of people might think something like that is good. I, for one, do believe that Modern should have creature-based strategies. I do welcome the inclusion of white-black mid-range in the Modern format. I think it's a really cool creature deck that has a lot of optionality. It's playing a lot of classic Modern cards. It is playing a lot of new Modern cards, to be fair. It is playing a couple of Modern Horizons options that do push it over the edge, but even still, some lists are playing Ketravos, which is a nice little standard introduction. Some lists aren't. And I think the variability in a deck list like that is really fun to explore. And I don't think it needs to be held back by something like Punishing Fire, Grove of the Born Willows, alongside a Renin 6 deck to maybe be like Modern's first introduction into a true lands-based strategy. Although I should say it's not like we have crop rotation into, you know, a couple of other lands that are really important in the lands-based strategy, but there are like soft lands deck. I guess Titan is the closest lands deck, but even in the legacy format, Titan's closest analog is probably like Cloudpost, and Cloudpost is really just like a mix of Eldrazi, Tron, and a little bit of Amulet. So that's like the closest analog, in my opinion. Lands is just a completely different strategy in terms of just the control that it has and the locks that it goes for. It wants to play that really long game. It's going to be able to grind you out that way. And it's just been one of those decks that a lot of pilots in the legacy format have been able to be rewarded by with long-term game history. But there's a variety of reasons why it may or may not be playable right now that the Lands Discord members can talk to you about. But regardless, something like Renin 6, Grove of the Burn Willows, and Punishing Fire, I feel like would be that reason to play this. And even if we look at the top creatures played in the Modern format, Haywire Might mostly as a main board like Inclusion. Tameo, it would not answer, although once it flips, it might be able to keep in check just a little bit. I mean, it's going to be able to +2 immediately to 4, so you can Punishing Fire it back to 2. Solitude, you're going to be able to kill. Ketramos, no. Emery, you're going to be able to knock out Nophage. Ragavan, Emperor of the Bones, Brogar Trawler, Witch's Enchanter, Felia. Again, a lot of cards out of the white-black mid-range list. Overlord of the Buildmark, no. Knight of the White Orchid, yes. Flicker Wisp, yes. Even Aven Interrupter. Thassa's Oracle, not. I mean, it's a 1/3, but even if you could, not really relevant. Guide of Souls before the buff. Oslo of Pride. There's a lot of things that you're going to be able to kill. A Johnny before it flips. There are a lot of cards that you're going to be able to hit out of the deck, and I don't know if Punishing Fire entering the format alongside some type of like red-green mid-range based control land strategy with Renin 6 is exactly what this format needs to push out white-black mid-range, which has been the most recent kind of positive thing for the Modern format, in my opinion. I don't know, like it feels like such a cool deck. It doesn't feel like it's doing anything necessarily broken. There are some like fun flicker things with Overlord and Felia, but it just feels like a little bit of like toolboxy, like options. You get to do a little bit of everything. It just feels like it's doing fun stuff. And I think that's what's important when it comes to a deck list like this. So I don't think Punishing Fire should be brought back to hold back the creature decks, especially when we have like an active, good version of a creature deck right now in the Modern format. So that's why we should keep Punishing Fire away. The last card that I want to talk about here is going to be Dread Return. Now, this card, I think a lot of people like think about when it comes to the fact that Modern doesn't necessarily have all of the super fast ways to enable this. It does have the options for it, and I'm going to highlight why. So Dread Return, the key part about this card, yes, it's a 4-mana reanimation spell, but really its flashback card is cost is what the key is. A lot of people haven't come across this card. It's been banned for a very long time in the Modern format, but playable in Pauper and Legacy. For just you Modern players that maybe just play Pioneer or Standard, you aren't aware of Dread Return. Flashback, sacrifice 3 creatures, and then you're going to be able to play this for free, and you reanimate a creature. So in the Pauper format, where you use a card like this is you mill yourself out, you play a bunch of Dark Rituals, Songs of Dan, Cabal Ritual, like you like feed your mana pool. Then you use probably 4 mana if you're lucky. It's going to be Balustrade Spy. If you're unlucky, it's 5 mana. But you're going to use 4 of that mana you generate to cast Balustrade Spy, where you mill yourself out. You essentially, target player reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a land card. And then you keep that land card on top, but then you just mill out the rest. So if you have no more lands, you just mill out the rest of your deck. Now, the reason this is possible in older formats we'll talk about, but in the Pauper format, you play this with one land. You're playing something like Land Grant to get that land out of there. And then you mill yourself out using the remainder of your mana. You're going to bring back cards like Dregscape Zombie, which you can unearth. And then you cast Dread Return. Once your whole deck is flipped over, Dread Return, you sacrifice, you know, 1 Spy, 2 Dregscape Zombies, or 3 Dregscape Zombies if you have no Spy. And then you are going to be bringing back a Lot-Led Giant. Lot-Led Giant makes it so when it enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to target opponent for each creature in your graveyard. Now, this is obviously the safest option. This is the least broken option because Pauper, this is the answer for it. This is 1 land Spy in Pauper. Now, when it comes to the Legacy format, which is you have Oops All Spells, which is the older brother of 1 land Spy. This is probably the marquee reason why Dread Return probably will not be coming in. Dread Return is going to mill out, is going to be part of your win condition where you mill out your whole deck with Balustrade Spy and Undercity Informer, and you're really going to be reanimating a Thassa's Oracle for the win. That's it. That's pretty much the win there. And the whole way that you're going to be doing this is going to be with something like Narcomoeba. I don't know why this list specifically is playing 2 Narcomoebas or 1 Narcomoeba. It should be 2. It's kind of interesting, but okay, fair enough. I can understand how they can get to the multiple creatures, but ideally you play Balustrade Spy. You mill yourself out, then a Narcomoeba comes out. Then what you do is you sacrifice the Narcomoeba to a Cabal Therapy. The Cabal Therapy is cast from your graveyard, which is essentially like a soft Thoughtseize for, you know, I don't need to read it. Just deal with me here. It's a Thoughtseize you can cast for free out of your graveyard by sacrificing a creature. Because you cast it out of your graveyard, you can then have 4 Poxwalkers re-enter the battlefield. And then with those Poxwalkers, you're then gonna, you know, sacrifice, cast a Dread Return, reanimating the Thassa's Oracle. Now, to be fair, in the modern format, a lot of this deck list is actually legal, but a lot of it isn't. A lot of the key cards aren't. And that, like, therein lies the problem. So the reason this deck works in older formats is something like MDFCs. So we already have the concept of Belcher in the modern format. That is mono blue. You're using Force and Negations and a couple of other counter spells along with the well, it used to be the One Ring, but you use options like that to just win with Goblin Charbelcher. Now, notably, there are versions of Oops All Spells that I'm wondering if they'll show it here that are using Goblin Charbelcher. About 50% of decks are using 4 copies of Goblin Charbelcher in their sideboard. And so that often ends up being like a common switch for the legacy version of this. And I think like the main version when it comes to the modern format, it can use that because again, you do have access to Agadeem's Awakening and you know, Disciple of Freyalise. Like these MDFCs are all modern legal, Fel the Profane, Dread Return. Sorry, not Dread Return, but Fel the Profane. But you don't have access to Simian Spirit Guide or Elvish Spirit Guide. So first, you don't have access to the Exile free mana. Elvish Spirit Guide never printed into modern, and Simian Spirit Guide recently banned in modern. I say recently as in relatively in terms of modern's history. But when it comes to the other enablers, you don't have Dark Ritual, and you don't have this list isn't playing Cabal. This list is not playing. Yeah, this list isn't playing Cabal Ritual. Interesting. Okay, well, regardless, let's go down here. You don't have access to Dark Ritual, and you don't have access to Cabal Ritual, which is note. So I think there's an argument for this card to potentially come back. The problem is, as long as Thassa's Oracle is there, we're really a ritual or 2 away from having this be a problem. I think there are pretty relatively easy ways to save something like this. Again, we do have Pact and Negation. We can protect certain parts of this combo with something like Force and Negation. You can sideboard into Goblin Charbelcher. You can have that be an option in the main board as like a random sideboard juke. But I think in general, Dread Return is close. I don't think this is super good without the free mana in the Dark Ritual, but you still do have the MDFCs. Even without the Simian Spirit Guide, you still have the win condition in Thassa's Oracle. You still have the Lot-Led Giant, which is a safe alternate win condition there. And you have some of the safe options as well. So for example, you have Memory's Journey, which is the safe option in terms of like, against something like Fairy Macabre or Surgical Extraction. You have yourself extra mana, then you activate Memory's Journey. If you don't have the green, what you do is you use the 1 of Jack-o'-lantern in your graveyard that you're going to mill out to turn whatever mana you have into green, to then use something like Memory's Journey to shuffle away the Fairy Macabre or the Surgical Extraction targets to then continue to be able to draw through and get through that game. You'll notice the Lot-Led Giant specifically in the sideboard of this list. Now, even with stuff like Force of Vigor, even with some of the other options this deck has, I think this deck is a little too close. I don't know if we want to introduce too much of these like OTK combos. I'm not sure if this deck really can. This deck can OTK, but it's not going to be like turn 1 wins. but I don't know if this is necessarily super healthy for the modern format. I think it's close. I think it's possible. I just don't know if a world in a world of Faithless Looting, if this is what we want to be introducing. Although there could be a fun like reanimation deck with Faithless Looting and Lotlet Giants that could come about with something like Dread Return. Now, that's going to be my thoughts on this video. Those are the 3 cards that I do not think alongside Dread Return should be unbanned. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. What are some other cards that I think are like, well, let me know. There are cards that obviously shouldn't be unbanned, but what are some cards that you think are borderline that just shouldn't come back in any way because of maybe a key reason that people are forgetting? There are cards that I definitely think will be unbanned. I'll be making that a video down the week here. But again, let me know what you think in the comment section down below, and just super excited for things to change next Monday.